they have 2 computer sessions every single week. So there's no reason that it can't and shouldn't be done before the end of the week. It's just 20 of those. What do you spend about an hour and a half in computer over the course of a week? So let's get that done. So besides Freckle Minutes, you have today's assignment, which we're going to work on together, lesson 5.4. And we're going to be looking at some select problems from workbook 79 and 80. Now, I'm going to start you off with some from both the textbook and your workbook, but for homework, we're going to finish anything that we didn't finish on 80. They're word problems, they're writing and then solving. So really, there's only a handful to do. So this is really kind of the culmination of our work here, this chapter so far. And that is going to be in preparation for your quiz, which is going to be on Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday is the 13th. I'm going to be passing out a study guide towards the end of class, and you'll notice online kids, it just went live on your Google Stream at 12:30. That's so that you can start to prepare for the assessment on Wednesday when you have some extra time tonight, all right? At least start to look at the instructions and say, yeah, I know how to do this block of problems. Oh, I need to ask about that. Or, you know what I mean? Kind of scan it and give yourself some awareness of where you stand with the material. One thing that we did, you'll notice, this is, hi Ava, take this with you. You'll notice that on the study guide, that there's a block of questions that you've seen before. You saw them last week on Friday. Remember I came by with a little mini assignment for you? I took it right off of your study guide. So there's a whole block of questions that you already have done. And what we're going to do tomorrow is just make sure that not only your answers are right, but your structure and format for solving equations is proper. So what I would like to do right now at this time is 2 things. I'm going to, and if you haven't already loaded these onto Google Classroom, now is a good time to do it. I would like to check workbook from 5.3, I think it maybe 78, 79, somewhere in there. No, 78. I'd like to check in 78, that section that we did for homework a couple days ago, plus anyone else that hasn't turned in this assignment from Friday, come on over to the turn-in box. Just open your workbook. Is it 77 or 78, guys? 77. Have 77 open and come and give me your loose leaf work from Friday's assignment. Just pop it in the, I've got it, John. It looks great. I'm going to give it back to you tomorrow, and we're going to look at the rest of the study guide and compare our structure and format. But I was looking this through. This is perfect. Okay. I have John's. I have Isaac's. I already have Parker's. I have Natalie's. I have Nick and Evans, and I have Luke Leonard. Okay. And then this is a good time for you at home. If you haven't already posted this assignment, take a minute and get that uploaded so that I can see your progress with this skill. I would like to see how you're doing with those 3 steps. All right. Come around and Mr. Juicy, the rest of the classes workbook assignments. So if you want to hold your workbook up to the screen, I'll just, Mr. Juicy, stamp yours as well. But I'm going to pause this recording. We're going to be practicing writing some equation based on what I'm saying, and then we'll solve for them. So let me just say one to start. If I said something like this, oh, someone popped off. Let's get Gavin back in here. There he is. There we go. If I said something like the difference of a number and 5 is 10. The difference of a number and 5 is 10. Could you figure out not only what I'm saying with words and put it into math equation, but then find a solution for that? What would you do, Isaac? If I said the difference between a number and 10 is 5, what kind of process would you go through? Okay.
And then subtracted by 10
All right.
equals 5.
So would you mind writing that on the screen? I don't know if your finger will. Do you think it will? Here, let's give it a try.
It
Might have to recalibrate. Let's give it a try. Isaac said he was decoding exactly. There you go. He's decoding exactly what I said, but using mathematical symbols and numbers to represent the words I was saying. So I'm going to say it again, and then you tell me, does that match? The difference between a number and 10 is 5. Does that match? Okay, so could we now solve it by using our 3-step process? You bet. So what's step 1? Remind me. Identify the variable, which means I simply go ahead and call out the position where that variable exists. I make my balance bar. And this part, boys and girls, is probably the most commonly missed portion of solving, is placing a balanced move for me to see, for you to see, as you're solving. Most of you know that the answer is going to be 15. You know that, but you need to prove it to me in the process of documenting that balanced move. So what is the balanced move that gets n by itself? What is the balanced move, class?
Canceling 10 out.
I got to get rid of the 10. So in order to do so, I have to add 10 to both sides, right? Do you see me adding 10 to both sides? Do you see that? I have to see that on your paper. I have to see that in your work. That balanced move means I'm following the rules of algebra. I'm keeping the equation balanced. Therefore, it doesn't matter what I add or subtract or multiply or divide on both sides, as long as I do it to both. They stay balanced, right? So now that I have applied my balanced move, the last step is to simplify, to solve. So we know that the answer, the solution, is 15. Now that one's not too bad. That was a pretty straightforward one. Now I'm going to incorporate a little bit more of some higher level types of problems here. Let me type it for you instead of saying it. I know sometimes saying it out loud puts another level of trickiness to it. So how about this one? All right, so let's try and build an equation for this expression or this statement. What parts can I identify that are going to decode to be certain symbols or certain operations? Do you see any words that are like, oh, I spy a math word? Do you remember when we did this? Like, I spy a math word, what do you see? So this is a chance for people to use the chat room appropriately. There's some people at home that are not using the chat room appropriately. This is your chance to show me your knowledge about math words. So what type of words do you see and what kind of things can you connect them with? John, what's one word you see?
Some.
He saw the word sum and he said, well, that is what kind of a word, John?
Addition.
It's an addition word. So he knows that when he goes to replace this word with a symbol, he's going to be using a plus sign, right? Anything else that you see? I see a couple responses in the chat box about the word sum. Thank you. But what about this word here? What's this word equate to? What's that word? Another term for, go ahead, Zoe.
Equals.
Equals, yeah, that's the word equals. Is the word equals. And when we decode this entire equation, here's where the equal sign is going to be. So 38.8 belongs on that side of the equal sign, and everything else belongs before it. The sum of, remember this thing? A number. What does a number represent, class? A variable, right? And I could pick any variable I'd like. I'm going to use m this time, m and 16.2. We were told it was a sum problem, an addition problem. So now that I have my equation, solving is a piece of cake. Step 1, step 2, step 3. So for your assessment that's coming and for today's homework, you will not only have to first write your equation out, like decode the wording, write the equation, then you follow my 3-step process and solve it. I feel like an infomercial when I describe the 3-step process, like step 1, identify the variable. Step 2, it's as easy as making a balanced move. I just feel like I'm on an infomercial, but I promise you that as you get into more difficult algebra, you're going to go back to this because it's tried and true. It follows the rule set and there's never second guessing your instinct. Like if you prove the balanced move, there's no kind of background doubt about whether you're doing it the right way or not. So can we go ahead and solve the rest of this? All right, get rid of that. And what would the difference between those two be? 22.6. How could I test this value and see if it truly is the solution? Anyone want to unmute from home and share with me the approach I take? What do I do when I want to test this solution? Going once, going twice. Anyone out there?
You're supposed to add 22.6 and 16.2 and see if it equals to 38.8.
And if it does, then that means you did it right, right? It's balanced, it's true. What we're trying to prove is that our equation is equal, that it's balanced. And if 22.6 makes it happen, then you did it right. Okay, workbook 79, please. Let's look at workbook 79. And I'm going to see if I can get it up on my screen here. Workbook 79. Preview, there should be 2 questions, I think, at the bottom of your page. Are there 2 questions on 79? Okay, read 79 and see if you can come up with, not the answer just yet, but just the equation that you would make to solve that given scenario. I'm going to pull it up here on the screen. Just a moment. All right. There we go. So question number 1 says there are 29 open spaces on the first floor of a parking garage. There are 12 more open spaces on the first floor than on the second floor. How many spaces are open on the second floor? Whew. So this is a little bit more detailed than the straight up, the difference of or the sum of. We have to figure out with the language given what is happening between those 2 terms, right? Any other thoughts about what kind of equation to build? I'm going to read number 2 as well and give you time to think. 12 tickets to the state football game championship cost $72. How much does one ticket to the game cost? Okay. Any ideas about maybe where to start? Are you thinking one of these is involving more addition, subtraction, and maybe one of them's involving more multiplication, division? What's your gut telling you, Katerina? What are you thinking?
I was thinking that it would be, the first one would be addition, because it's asking how many more.
Okay. So she sees the word more and is thinking this is probably addition, subtraction, something like that. And then maybe this one, if they're talking about ticket prices and there's 12 tickets and ask you the cost of one ticket, there's probably some division multiplication going on there, right? The total being divided up into parts. So see if that helps you build an equation at all. Start to write down what your thoughts are on numbers 1 and 2. What kind of equation could you build to solve that? Anyone at home have some ideas of where we would get started with number 1 or 2? I don't care which one we do first. I'm kind of thinking number 2 is easier. What are your thoughts on that? Number 2 seems a little more straightforward to me. The part being divided by the whole, maybe it's a little more connected to my background knowledge, so maybe that's why I find it easier. Allie, what are you thinking? For number 2, are you working on?
Yeah.
Okay, she's gonna give us some insight on number 2.
72 divided by 12 equals a number.
This is her suggestion for an equation. She said, let's do 72 divided by 12 is going to be equal to x, some kind of variable. All right. Is there maybe a different equation we could use and achieve that same result? Isaac, go ahead.
Do 72 divided by a number equals 12.
Sure. You could do 72 divided by this price would equal 12 tickets, right? You would still achieve the same result. You were going to say that one? Yeah, there are 2 different equations you could use. Both of them will give you the same answer, right? Now, we can go after either one of these and perform the rules of division, multiplication, right? But notice how x is being divided on that one. That one's tough to arrange and think about. Which one do you think is easier for us to solve? The top one or the bottom one? The top one is easier because I already have knowledge about what to do when I have numbers divided by numbers. I simply divide them, right? So if you're faced with an equation that you made that looks too difficult to solve, you know that multiplication and division are exact opposites of each other, right? Therefore, you can just tweak their equation around and make a new fact family. Do you remember when you were young and you did fact families like 3 plus 5 equals 8, 5 plus 3 equals 8, 8 minus 5 equals 3, 8 minus 3 equals 5, right? You can apply that same understanding to a 6th grade situation where maybe the second one is the equation that popped up out of the problem, but it's not easy to solve it, right? So then convert it to something that is. What would we get for the answer for this one? 72 divided by 12 is what, everybody? So 6 is going to be equal to x, meaning it costs $6 per ticket for this particular football game. That's a steal. $6 for a state football championship ticket. That's a pretty good price. All right, going back here to number 1, I'm thinking that this is going to be like addition subtraction scenario because I see that word more than or more. It's involved using the first floor and comparing it to the second floor, right? So how many spaces are open on the second floor? We were told there are 12 more open spaces on the first floor than on the second floor. Now, is it fair to say that the amount of spaces on the first floor are going to be equal than the amount of spaces on the second floor? Not open spaces, just spaces in general. Would you say that the amount of spaces on the first floor and second floor are equal? We just don't know how many are available on each. Imagine a parking garage, right? So a parking garage generally has the same amount of spaces as you go up. It's just some of those spaces might be more open or available than the others. So really what I want you to understand is we're comparing the first floor spaces to the second floor. Woo, we're comparing what we know. So we know there are 29 open spaces on the first floor. Does anyone have an equation that they are kind of coming up with to help them solve this? What do you think? Oh, lots of hands. Okay, I haven't heard from you yet today.
29 plus 12 equals a number.
Okay, let me write that down. 29 plus 12 equals a number. Any other suggestions? Or is this the same one? Do you have a different one?
So I think it's like the way that we usually do it, like 9 plus 12, and like the line.
Okay,
So I did m plus 12 equals 41, and then I put the line between it, and then I did 12 plus 12 minus each other, cancel each other out, and then I put m, and then I did 12 minus 41, which is 29.
okay. So you found that same number, but you found it in a different way. Okay, so she found that same value. Anyone at home find it a different way? No? Okay, Zoe?
I didn't find another way, but on number 2, I figured out the problem and I did not get anything close to 6.
Okay, maybe you flipped the divisor and the dividend. If you think about what is being cut up here, that might help you put a good starting spot. Like what's being cut up here is the 72, is the big cost. And we're slicing that cost into smaller parts, right? So are we slicing it into the amount of tickets or maybe the cost per ticket? So you're gonna either divide 72 by 12, or if you divide it by 6, you'll find that you get 12. So it depends on which way you look at it. All right, let's take a look now at page 80. And what I'm gonna do on page 80 is just sort of gear you up to start solving those independently. So what I'm gonna be doing for, actually, it looks like you're only gonna be doing numbers 1 through 5 because number 6 is something that we have already been talking about for over a week now. Numbers 1 through 5, how we're gonna do this is I'm gonna give everyone a chance to just read them for a couple minutes, just read them. And would you mark down with a pencil, what operations do you think are at work? Okay, it's either gonna be addition, subtraction, or multiplication, division. It's not gonna be just subtraction or just division. It's going to be those complementary operations. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes here, quietly read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just start to perceive maybe what equation would you write for this situation. Okay, go ahead. So if you had to say which ones were most like each other in format. Would you say any particular numbers are going to be solved in a similar way? Were like numbers 1 and 2 really alike, or 1 and 4, or 3 and 4? What did you notice as you were reading that, hey, my approach for this problem, I can use it again, but for this other situation? Did you notice that about any problems? What did you notice?
For all of them, I read them through once, and I went through my thinking when I did I Fly and math series,
Okay.
and I found all the math words, and I kind of read it through again. And then
That guided you a little bit.
what I was gonna do.
If you couldn't hear her from home, Zoe suggested that, okay, I read them all once, I previewed them, but then I read them again playing I Spy Math Word, and I looked for any clues about what operation I was going to need, or maybe what approach to take. Okay. Isaac, did you see any connections between the types of problems? You had your hand up too.
1 and 2 are about how many you fit into
Okay.
or how many hours does it
If you can't hear him, he said that numbers 1 and 2 both have that same format of you're taking a whole and you're breaking it into smaller parts. So what operation is that? Multiplication and division, right? So both numbers 1 and 2, we have a total amount, and we're going to divide it into smaller parts. So let's go set up those two problems, numbers 1 and 2. So here's the equation here for number 1. We saw that we have a total of 135 packages to ship. So that's like the total amount.
It's on grade.
Thanks, guys. Does it get unfreeze by any particular motion? Oh, Mr. Projector, come on. It doesn't want to do math today. My projector is frozen. Well, am I gonna have to do these on the board? Use my mouse painfully?
Maybe.
Oh, I think I might have to turn her off and turn it back on. My board is frozen here in the classroom. Let's see if I can. Here, let's try that. Oh, darn, it worked. So if I have 135 packages, represents the whole, it's asking me about cutting that whole into 5 parts, right? So you should be imagining, now this is going to be a little tricky, but imagine that's 5 equal parts, right? So there are a couple of different equations that would match this scenario, right? We could say, well, 135 is going to be equal to 5 groups of whatever is contained within each of those boxes, right? 135 will be balanced with 5 groups of whatever we have, right? You could also convert this to 135 divided by 5, right? And that would give you the answer for the value of one of those shipping crates, it looks like. Should anyone go ahead and solve that just yet? What would 135 divided by 5 be? Go ahead. 27. So each of these little crates will have 27, is it items or 27 pounds? What is it? Oh, just packages. Each of these crates will have 27 packages in it. So the answer for this one is X equals 27. So knowing that, use the same approach for number 2. I'm not going to go and solve that for you just now. You go after that one. Okay, I understand now. There's each of the crate, there's 5 packages in one case, basically, one crate. So number 2 is set up the same, right? You can handle this one, come back to it later. 13 represents the total, right? And they don't tell you a number, but they do tell you that he's doing homework Monday through Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So what would you be splitting that 13 among? How many days?
5.
4? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Oh,
5 days. Yeah, so we're gonna split it again into 5 parts. And so you know how to go after solving that one. Write me an equation. So while these two were multiplication and division, well, my board doesn't like when I write over there. If these were multiplication and division, I will tell you that numbers 3 and 4 are addition and subtraction based. So you have a total and you're either adding some or removing some, okay? A waiter adds 2.5 pints of lemonade to a pitcher. We don't know how much is in there already to start, right? So we can represent that amount. Here, pretend this is the pitcher. Let's pretend there's some already in there, but then he adds 2.5 more to the pitcher. So altogether, how much is in the container? 4.75. So I could write 2 different equations. The total, subtract the 2.5, and then get what's left over. Or make an addition equation of, here's what was in there to start. I'm going to add 2.5, and that's going to be 4.75 when all is said and done. Now you're going to use that same approach for numbers 3, 4, and 5. 5 is a little bit of a 2-step one, where you're going to add some, but then you're going to take away. So keep that in mind when you go about solving and structuring that one. I'm going to be moving on to my next class now. So before I see you next, I would expect that you have these 5 problems done and that you've at least taken some time to glance through the study guide and say, yes, I've got that. Ooh, I need to ask about that tomorrow, so that we can chat tomorrow more specifically about certain types of problems and prep for Wednesday's quiz. Your study guide, I don't know if I marked it on the kids here in the classroom, but I know I did it on the Google Classroom post. We're only being quizzed on the types of problems from 1 through 32. The problem solving part on the back, on the bottom, those are going to be like bonus types of problems. So you're welcome to do them. They're just not going to be required of you for this quiz, okay? So where are you stopping on your study guide? Where are you stopping? 32. So maybe take out your study guide now and write extra on the bottom for those ones on the back. Did you notice anything about the ones on the front, numbers 8 through 25? Have you noticed about anything of them? Did I pass these out to you yet?
No.
Oh my gosh. They're like looking at me like I have 4 heads, but I have them in my hand. I haven't passed them out to them. Numbers 8 through 25 were literally the same assignment you did on Friday. So you don't even have to do 8 through 25, okay? But you're going to compare them to the answer key that I have on the classroom, so you can make sure that you did them properly, all right? So you're going to look at, let's do Wednesday though. So you have a couple days to check this out. All right, everybody. I'm going to end my recording here, but feel free to stick around if you need any other help figuring out a game plan for the rest of the week, all right? Good job today.